Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the Higher Grounds podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are really anticipating today's episode. Today on the podcast, Brother Michael and Brother Stephen and I are going to be discussing the subject of integrity. 3 verses in the book of Job. Job talks about the fact that he had integrity and he wanted to retain it. Integrity is a commodity in the human family that is disappearing quickly because most individuals that you run into on an everyday basis, their world is absolutely revolving around themselves. And integrity is character that puts oneself in the background and puts others above himself. And so today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the importance of integrity, and particularly in regard to the ministry. You stay tuned to the Higher Grounds podcast. Good day to you. Welcome back to the Higher Grounds podcast. I really am thankful that you've joined us today, and I'm glad to be back in my chair. I am out of the penalty box, and I am not promising that I will not deliver another forearm shiver to my left and your right. I'm not promising, but I'm glad to be back. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Brother Andy. How in the world are you?
It's good. Yeah,
you come through your chastening pretty well.
I did.
Yeah,
I did. It's
you
no
don't seem
longer
bitter at
awful.
all.
Yeah.
You asked him how he was doing and he said good?
Yeah, I did.
Hey,
Yeah.
praise the Lord.
The 3 weeks he sat over there, it was like, oh, gloom, despair, and agony on me, deep depression.
I was in the penalty box.
Excessive misery.
You want to sing a little hee-haw, would you?
That's right, yeah. Sorry about that. Some of that stuff sticks.
Yeah.
I think it's gone.
Yeah.
I ain't heard it in a long, long time, but it just, I have flashbacks of Saturday night when I was a young boy.
Yep. That's right.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to sell my parents so short there, but it did.
Well, now, there's a lot of shows from back in the late 70s on into the early mid 80s. You think that was a great show. Remember we watched that as a kid?
Yeah.
And you go back and watch it, you say, Lord God, what were we watching?
That's exactly right.
I got 3 words for you on that one. Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry.
Oh, yeah. You can watch some time. You go back and see a kid watching Tom and Jerry now. Them rascals, there's some more booze on there than shooting and all that. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about like Daisy Duke and them kind of people.
Well, I mean that too, but I'm just saying. I'm just talking about. You go back and watch what kids were watching Tom and Jerry then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's done rolling and laughing.
He gone. Yeah.
He gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom and Jerry didn't have much integrity.
That's what we're going to deal with today. You're trying to segue us in.
He's sagging.
Without telling us how you're doing.
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be back over here. I did enjoy my time there.
Have you ever known him when he wasn't great? I mean,
No, not much. He has the gift of encouragement. I mean, he's like a modern day Barnabas or something.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that, and then you don't respond.
So
we balance each other.
So Mark Biddy called me the other day.
Right.
No, I was with him.
Yeah.
And he said, Steve and I are preaching in a meeting together. I said, really?
Yeah.
He said, Brother Steve is coming in and he's going to preach. And he said, the pastor, Dustin Bonham, shout out.
Shout out, Brother Dustin.
So he said, Dustin asked me to come in and kind of, to clean up the mess at Steve.
Oh, there'll be one.
The mess he would leave behind and the destruction he would leave. I said, the only thing you're going to need for Steve is a squeegee to push all the sugar off the floor. That's the only thing you're going to need for Steve to clean up behind Steve.
So you're saying that after Brother Aldridge gets done with the revival meeting, you just need insulin?
Yeah. Just need a little insulin.
An insulin pump.
Yeah.
Straighten
it back out, huh?
That's exactly right.
Got little kids running around with cotton candy in their hand, sugar all over the teeth.
Sugar high.
Yeah. Probably a couple of dentist appointments to get them rotten teeth.
Jesus is good. The devil's good.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
It's just great.
Oh, man. You are busting on him hard today.
Yeah.
Oh, I listen.
Aren't you glad it's not you?
Hey.
Don't worry,
Don't
worry, Galilee. Heaven is a real place. I mean, he hasn't told you about it in a while.
He's on it now. Set them free, Steve. Set them free.
Yeah.
Say people can have joy. Tell them. That's right. That's right.
That right there is funny.
Yeah. If your pastor over here has been telling you that you're living through purgatory for the rest of eternity, he is lying to you. There is joy in the journey.
My people are saying, you heard him preach every week. You know where purgatory's at.
Yeah, right here on our pew. That's right.
Oh, hallelujah.
Tell it all, good neighbor.
That's exactly
Say it again so the ones in the back can hear you a little bit louder.
Amen.
funny.
Amen. So we're drinking. Hey, we just can't get enough of 45.
45.
45 blend. It is.
We're hanging on long as we can.
That's exactly right. This is that build a wall coffee. Praise the Lord.
Yes, sir.
Our dear president. Amen. All right. So today we want to take the opportunity to talk to you about the subject of integrity. Now, through the years, we've dealt with the qualifications of a bishop, and we've talked about the ministry. And over the last few weeks, we've been talking about funny things in the ministry and how we got called to the place we are, advice we would give to young men. And a lot of the last 3 weeks or so has been specifically to young men, right? So today, I thought it would be a good, the 3 weeks would be a good segue into what I believe is important. And I believe that pastoral integrity is a thing that we're severely lacking. And I believe that this is something that the Bible speaks about. And the importance of integrity, I believe we need to kind of to resound that little old message a little bit. What do you think, Brother Mike? And what are you seeing in regard to ministerial integrity?
Integrity is something that seems like it's fading in a lot of ways.
How would you define it? I mean, personally, I'm sure we'll get to some kind of a etymological definition from the dictionary, but how would you define it in layman's terms?
I think in layman's terms, a person's integrity or integrity defined would just simply be the way you're made up and what kind of is your compass or dictates the things you will and won't do, how you live your life, is the way I would define integrity. It's not something that's usually forced upon a person. It's something that's internal. It's there, and it does. It kind of helps. It kind of helps push you in the right direction. There are verses in the Bible that even kind of lend to that.
So if it's not forced upon a person, but it's something from within a person, then it deals really, I guess, with a synonym, we would say it's character.
It's your character.
Yeah, right.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you think about it, Steve? I mean, in regard to what you've seen in the ministry, I mean, you're 40, right? 40.
And next birthday.
And so, I mean, you're in that younger generation of men coming along. What are you seeing as far as integrity is concerned, and how do you view it as its importance?
I just finished making a note about how that your integrity and your character is always going to be in check, and it's going to be tested. If you lose that, if you lose your integrity, if you lose automatically when you say something, there's doubt when you're out and about. So it matters how we represent Christ in the world. It matters how we treat one another. It matters when I give my word, whether it's to my family, to my church, to a missionary, to another preacher, when I'm able to speak to them and keep that word. Those are things that matter. And then I've got to keep that in mind as I go about my everyday life, how I act and respond to people in all settings.
Right.
I think this is probably a bigger issue than we think. Our character is always in check, and our integrity is always in
there's
question.
no doubt. Matter of fact, you would be better off to be short on cash than you would be to short on
absolutely.
character.
Oh, yeah.
Character is an invaluable resource. A good name is, Solomon said, a good name is rather to be had than great riches.
Sure.
And because character, when a person has character, I don't know what it is about the element of true character, but it seems like a person who has and exhibits great character, every need they have is seemingly always met, and they're taken care of.
Yep, absolutely.
How are you seeing it severely lacking? I'll use the word severely. I'm not sure that that's accurate, but how do you see it lacking in this generation?
I think because times have changed so much, we do have access to things today that maybe 30, 40 years ago they would not have had access to.
Are you talking about like the ability to see people for how they are?
Well, no. I mean, I might have misunderstood the question. I thought you were asking me how I see character slipping.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say is basically this. With from the versatility of your cell phone to the access to things that, for example, take in the area, say, of like pornographic material. Used to be when we were younger, you had to go into a store and you had to buy a magazine or something from behind the counter. Right.
Right. CD place.
Yeah, you had to go to a movie place or whatever, or somebody in the neighborhood had to have one. Nowadays, it's just the tip of your fingers. I mean, it's on your phone. You can work your way around getting to it if you want to.
Sure.
The only thing that's going to keep anybody from developing an addiction on something like that is going to be your integrity, your character.
Absolutely.
We've talked about this on the podcast before, putting layers of accountability in your life, but ultimately it's going to come down. What's king is going to be integrity.
Yeah.
You have to make that conscientious decision. This is unhealthy for me. I don't need to have this in my life. And then you always want to be held accountable. But ultimately your integrity is going to make or break you in that regard. And I think integrity is you seeing the value of allowing some lines to be drawn around your life, some fences to be built, so that you don't end up shipwreck or a casualty.
It doesn't matter how many accountability partners that you have. It may deter you from some things for a time. But if there is a determination within you to do wrong, you're going to do wrong if no matter how many accountability partners.
And can I say this when it comes to integrity? I think a lot of times we don't realize the battle is usually over fulfilling some kind of lust.
Oh, yeah.
Let me give you an example. Like, let's just say that, everybody's, you got a salary and you're trying to live inside of your means, this, that, and the other. Well, also because you're in ministry, the church gives you a church credit card or whatever for certain things, whether it be feeding, visiting preachers, or you have a gas budget, whatever the case may be. Some guys, and I think this is probably a reflection on bad integrity, forget that that's the church card, not your card, and therefore start using it for any and everything. You know what I'm saying? Stuff they've not been given permission to. That's an integrity issue. You know what I'm saying? That's not yours. But because we tend to want to have a little more freedom in life, it's easy to find a resource and start plugging it in. Next thing you know, you're out there living really outside of your means, and doing things you ought not be doing.
In light of what you mentioned about what are we seeing, and I wrote, like Brother Michael said, integrity and accountability should always be in the same row. I think there is a lack of teaching integrity. In other words, where there is this group of men in our churches, or even those older preachers to younger men, just sitting them down and saying, you need to learn how to carry yourself. You need to learn how to keep yourself clean, because so many times the focus is on the public ministry, what you look like in the choir, what you look like in the pulpit, where there's not those men pulling you aside. You got to be careful of this. You've got to watch out for this. You need to guard these areas of your life. I think integrity and character are things that need to be taught and not just expected out of people.
Well, I agree. But integrity and character are so invaluable that once they're broken, you may be able to repair some breach in your character. But one person said it this way. They said a reputation once broken may possibly be repaired, but the world will always keep its eye on the spot where the crack once was. And that lends into the qualification of being blameless. In other words, having something to hold over you. The word integrity, when Job was mentioning it about his life, that word means innocent. In other words, there's nothing you can hold against me. I'm not guilty of anything. And very few people are in that position. If you were to be able to take their life and broadcast it on a screen where everybody could see it, very few people are in that position. But in integrity, the person who is not integritous in their life is an individual who, I believe, in my estimation, is self-consumed. And the God of their life is themselves, and their whole world, is circulating or revolving around them, and not a person with integrity lives not for himself but for other people. Would not agree?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's an accurate statement.
Well, what have you seen in your tenure, 15 years at Seagrove, and then within that 15 years, you have branched out to have friends in ministry and then start teaching in college, and you've watched men. You and I both have had friends of ours, but have had friends of ours who have violated their integrity and then tried to justify it, and and they're shipwrecked today. One I'm thinking about in particular, a friend of yours and mine, more yours than mine. But what have you seen that has led to the breach of their integrity? What happened?
Here's what happens. It's not like the adversary, and this is good news. It's not like the adversary has any new plans or any new means of deception. We hear it so much from the time we're young men in the ministry about some things you don't do, some lines you don't cross, blah, blah, blah. But for some reason, the way the adversary gets all of us is he gets us to thinking it wouldn't happen to us.
Yeah.
We're the exception to the rule. I can break these boundaries. I can do this, and I'm smarter than the guy before me. I'll say no sooner than he did. Blah blah blah. It happens. It's the same old.
Or
It's
legitimately. I mean, sometimes you may have a situation where you feel like you can legitimately cross a boundary that you've set because your motives, you believe, are pure.
It's Groundhog Day. It's like this, okay? Take, for example, say 6, 7, 8 years ago, I can't remember, there was a larger named preacher who fell, and he had made some mistakes with a female, and but what he had done was he broke his own rules. I mean, rules that he had counseled other young men in, whether it be through, first of all, starting off with communication, then meetings in private, blah, blah, blah. But somewhere in the mind, something clicks that says, I'm not going to be a casualty. I'm gonna be okay. I'm going to get by with this. Nobody gets by. We understand it. Eventually, it comes out. There's no need to even play the game. But that's what I see. I see men falling for the same thing over and over and over, just thinking you're going to be the exception to the rule, and there's just, in that particular area, there's rarely, if ever, any exceptions.
I don't see any.
Yeah.
I mean, not when you make those violations, there are very few people who don't recover. It's kind of like Samson. Samson laid his head in the lap of Delilah, and when he did, one little thing after another happened to him. And oftentimes we view Samson laying in the lap of Delilah as she's weaving his hair in a weaver's beam, or as she is binding him with withes or ropes. Yep. We view him as being unconscious and laying there asleep. And the truth of the matter is, when you read through that story, there is not one indication of him being asleep except when she is shaving his head off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so this is happening to him, and he's conscious and is at the same time unconscious of how close he is getting to his destruction.
That's right.
And there's a lot of people that are there.
Yes.
Now let's move on just a little bit. So I'm pastoring a church, and as I'm pastoring my church in my local area, I must have some element of ministerial integrity in my community not just toward people in the community, but toward other churches in the community. Mm-hmm. All right, so what do you see, Brother Steve, as men violating that integrity toward other ministers and other men in his community and other churches in his community? What do you see?
Yeah, one thing I was looking about integrity is you can retain your integrity if you keep your commitment even when your circumstances change.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
So you've believed something for so long, you've preached something for so long, you've witnessed to people you mentioned community in your area for so long. The casualty of breaking that is the harm it has and the shame it brings upon the ministry. I'm not just representing me. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm representing Christ. I'm representing the ministry and the church. Yeah. And I have the power to change that entire world's view of the church because of how I live my life and how I treat them. How many young people have lost all confidence in preachers because they're so ran by emotion?
Sure.
So how many have lost confidence in a preacher or a church or a camp or a group because they've seen that downfall? And you mark it down. The devil's going to make sure the right people see your downfall, and that's pressure. But again,
that's the whole purpose of it.
Exactly. That's right. But when you lose your life's influence, you've lost. It's tough.
Satan's agenda is not just the destruction of the individual, but the destruction of the influence of the individual to the detriment of many others. That's why Paul told the church at Corinth in 2 Corinthians 6:3, he said, giving no offense in anything, that the ministry be not blamed. Mm-hmm. And so that's not just with pastorate, with the pastorate, it's also with, the lives of every saved individual.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that I see that's disturbing to me, and I want to address this, is this attitude that my church is more important in the kingdom than your church.
Oh, my.
And since my church is more important in the kingdom than your church, then I have no accountability to you in regard to your flock and my flock. It's my job to build my flock at the expense of everybody in the community. And that is nauseating to me spiritually.
Yep.
My church is no more important to God than yours is, and your flock are the same sheep of the same shepherd, our great God Jehovah. And so I have no business in trying to solicit your sheep out of the pasture God has given you to pasture to come over to be in my pasture. Do you see that? Do you see that happening?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're in an area where there's more churches than
you can spit ahead of church.
Yeah, you can see it, and yes, and you've always said this to us young preachers. When you have people are going to leave, people are going to come, this and that and other. There needs to be phone calls made, and when you don't, and you just take their word that something's wrong, and now you're casting rocks at other men's ministries and their works, and just come on over, and you never try to help facilitate any restoration. You never make a phone call. You just remain silent. Then you're damaging your character.
As far as I'm concerned,
you're damaging your character. Yes, as a minister.
Right. What do you see?
Because of the natural nature of man in self-preservation, I think that's one of the reasons that probably most ministers fail in this way. I mean, you see another family coming or another individual, that's going to strengthen your congregation in some way, you think. It's going to help your finances. It's going to blah, blah, all these different areas. So therefore, you kind of just, turn your head and maybe not do the right thing, which is pick the phone up and make a phone call. Because here's my thing about it. I mean, I've lamented this with guys in my area before. I don't want to grow off your pain.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to experience, even if it's a facade of success, off of your downfall.
Right.
And so I think it's always the right thing to do. And don't just make the call if you're just doing it as a technicality, but make the call, say, look, these folks have showed up. I understand they're part of your church. Is there anything you can do to remedy or rectify? I want you to know, make the phone calls, set up the meetings. I'm for you in that area.
Right.
If it don't work, then I'll minister to them, as long as they're not under church discipline, as long, what say you there kind of deal. But I've tried to make that part of my own personal, now sometimes I may not pick the phone up, and I'm going to say something here that's going to seem a little bit rough. I may not pick the phone up immediately because some are going to visit, but they're not going to stay long.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I know they're not.
I don't mean this any kind of way, but I've probably run a few back to where they come from, and they needed to go back. They were leaving here's my thing. You come to me and you give me some silly off the wall reason why you're leaving a church. You're not going to be here long.
Okay.
If that's why you left there, you're going to leave here for the same reasons.
Right.
Sometimes we preachers are just real shallow in how we look at that. We're going to help all these people that nobody else could help.
Let me add. For example, these two men, let's say you pastor in the same area. Somebody leaves Brother Andy's church, and they show up at Brother Michael's church. Brother Michael's done nothing wrong. All right, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't done anything wrong.
He hasn't done anything wrong. So a lot of times people will do that. Now, they're not going to go through the extra steps of making it right, so it kind of just gets dumped in that pastor's lap.
True.
So it's just like with so many other things in the ministry, something gets handed to you, and then now you've done nothing wrong, but you can take some steps to make sure. I want to make sure that I keep my integrity intact.
That's
and
what
our
you have to do.
Exactly.
Right.
You just have to go ahead and take it and say, I'm going to go ahead and make sure we keep ourselves right while this person gets their issues worked out. I'm going to make the call and do those things and stay right.
And you can't make the call to the pastor where they're leaving from, on your way from visiting them, their house on Thursday night, saying, "Sure wish y'all come back on Sunday."
Yeah, that's
you can't do that either. That's a little deceptive as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Mike. So. I have had people that came here years ago. My first year here, matter of fact, guy came to this church. He'd been a member of this church before, so that would have been enough legitimacy for me to say, well, he left this church, he's returning. Well, I didn't know the guy. And so he came, and so I picked up the phone, and I called the pastor where he came from, and I said, so-and-so's here, his family. I said, I didn't invite him. I said, is there anything I can do to help you to get him to come back? He said, you help them best you can. I said, I didn't ask you whether I could help them or not. I asked you why they left, and can I help you to retain your members?
Oh, yeah.
He said, well, you asked, and so here's why. And he had never had anybody call him the way I'm calling, you know. And so he said, here's the truth. This individual's got a problem with X, Y, and Z, and I'm not changing my mind on X, Y, and Z, and this person's caused trouble, and so that's why they're leaving the church. I said, well, sir, I said, if they're a problem for you, they're going to be a problem for me. I said, I can't keep them from visiting, but I can keep them from joining. And I can promise you, every chance I get, I will bust their hide about the issues that you have a problem with. So that's what I did for about 2 or 3 months. They were still there. So I walked up to the guy on a Sunday morning and I said, what's your intention regarding this church? And he, in a smart aleck way, said, well, I guess my intention is to join it. Like that right there. I said, well, good. Then you and I are going to sit down and have a long talk. Well, that was on a Sunday morning. He didn't come back on a Sunday night, and I haven't seen him since. And he wound up going back to the church that he left.
Amen.
And I was all happy for that.
Yeah.
Because my job is not to build a kingdom.
Right.
My job is to serve the Lord Christ and to pastor the people he allows me to have.
Sure.
And I do my job. I go out and I try to win souls. I go out and try to visit people. But my job is not to solicit your church members to come to my church.
No.
And there are some churches that experience booms in growth because they got 20 from this church and 30 from that church and 30 from this church and 20 from that church. You didn't grow your church. All you done was just profited off other people's pain.
Yeah, you swole it.
Yeah, exactly right. And trust me, give it about a decade and it'll unswell as quick as it swolls.
Oh, well, I don't
you
want
right
to be
square in the rear end, friend.
that guy whose ministry is built that way. Bless his heart, pastoring.
Yeah. Well, folks have left our church and gone to other churches locally, and that pastor would say, listen, we're glad you're here, but don't tell us. We don't want you to talk about Brother Andy. We don't want you to talk about the church. We don't want you to talk about anything. All they're saying is, I don't want to know. Just come and give. I don't want to know. And that's all they're saying.
Right.
And I'm sad to say that for that fine feller, but it's going to bite him square in the rear end because he and this whole scenario can be multiplied over and over and over again in every community. When you do that, it eventually bites you.
Here's one thing you can't fix. I mean, people are people. And,
That's right.
And they get dissatisfied sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons. Yeah. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. I think with me more than anything, I just want to try to keep a clean slate between me and the other guys in my area. And we may not attend each other's meetings and this, that, and the other all the time, but I want there to be enough integrity on my side to say, Brother Poindexter's not trying to build his ministry off everybody else's. He'll pick the phone up and call, and he'll tell you, if you can go fix this, go fix it.
Right.
And I'll stay out of the way while you do. And that's where I'm at. It's more about me trying to keep an even kilter there, because all the other stuff's just a bunch of white noise.
I've had young preachers talk to me about larger ministries soliciting them to come to work for them, and they turned them down because they wanted the music ability of their wife or whatever the case may be. And those big ministries, West Coast ministries, East Coast ministries, North Coast ministries, I'm not going to say who they are, but they did not have enough integrity to pick up the phone and call those young people's pastor and say, do I have your permission to talk to your young people about coming to work for us? No integrity, only a kingdom-building mentality, and God's not in a million miles of that.
Wow.
Hey, we've done messed everybody up. So from the Higher Grounds Podcast, we love you. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week, and hey, keep pressing on the upward way.